how did I come up with this thing?
Where did this start? How did you decide to go from your previous series, which was the prayer beads? How did it progress to a more letter-based series of work?
I'll start in the beginning.
Okay.
Beginning as in when I first started creating artwork professionally. When I say professionally, I mean like create art intending to show it to an audience. Because some people show artwork just to make artwork, or they just create artwork for themselves. But creating work specifically, like I want to show this to a particular audience. I think like most people know, I mean, they already know me. They know on Instagram, I'm known as Monk Puppy. And that started with that's the name of my first character, also named Monk Puppy, which is inspired by several ingredients. By the trickster mythology, the coyote mythology, the Native American mythology, my stepmom's Chihuahua, and the two main deities in Hinduism, which is Krishna and Kali, I believe. I forget. But anyway, the blue deity and the green deity.
Vishnu?
Vishnu, yeah, there you go. Krishna and Vishnu. Or is it Kali and Vishnu? One of the three. I'll figure it out. I'm butchering that. Anyway. So I had that character and I painted that character everywhere. And noticing I like creating characters. I like having an idea, then creating a character off that particular idea or the inspiration. And all the characters are a combination of like autobiographical, things I'm fascinated with, things I'm reading about, sometimes current events. And then I created Boomer, which is inspired by the Super Mario mushroom and Mickey Mouse and psychedelics and Christ. And then other characters like the Baby or the Baby series, which is a series of painted babies and different faces, kind of inspired by the Care Bears. And then, but I noticed I was doing these, this common theme. Like I just kind of created a character that best represented what I wanted to communicate. If what I was going to communicate fell short, at least the imagery was interesting or fascinating. So even if an audience doesn't even understand the context of the character, they at least appreciate it aesthetically or just visually. And that kind of got old, not quickly, but I did it for several years. I kind of have an idea, make a character. With certain degrees of appropriation. Some I appropriated little to at all, and others I appropriated a lot. Like the Baby series, I almost appropriated very little of the Baby series, but then you have the curious elephant, the elephant giving himself fellatio. It's almost completely appropriated from like some sort of Japanese poster I discovered. So different degrees of appropriation, and which I find totally fine, I think. But I think appropriation is fine as long as you identify where you got it from. Not just say, look at what I made all by myself, but we acknowledge this is a painting that and I appropriated from this, which is different than just saying I claim this image as my own. But then I decided, or not was forced, but I was kind of challenged by a friend about I was kind of too comfortable with my process, and that process was kind of limiting on where I can actually paint, whether it be as a mural or inside or gallery or what have you. And I was married to this projector, overhead projector, which I use a lot for almost all my paintings. So I kind of put away my overhead projector, and same process as in like I have an idea, how to create an image off of that idea. And I was kind of fascinated by praying or prayer or the process of meditating, and how coming from a non-denominational Christian background, there was no devices or tools to pray with. It was just you just prayed. And then I noticed there's a lot of different cultures and religions that use tools, like prayer beads or rosaries or worry beads or something, a device to encourage some sort of state of meditation, which is very different from a non-denominational Christian, which I no longer identify as, but I think like anything, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So I don't identify myself as Christian anymore. However, there's certain things I keep on or hold on to. But I started creating these sort of beads, like painted beads, kind of decorative. And then the more and more I painted it, the more and more flat they got. It became three-dimensional to very flat, two-dimensional. And then it became just about line work. And to help me paint better, like these sort of circular, spiral-like designs, I started looking at calligraphy. I started looking at other artists. My mentor, Denise Tomasis, when I saw her work, I mean, not when I was like a student of hers, but now I look at her work and then I was like, oh wow, her lines are very confident. She was a mark maker. She was like a master abstract artist, I think, in my opinion. But if you look at her work, it's very confident. Like the line work is very like I'm making a mark here, making a mark here. I'm kind of sort of making a mark. I'm kind of sort of making a mark. If you see the work, it's very like
effortless.
It's not effortless. There's effort, but there's intent. It's like I'm gonna make a mark right here. I'm creating this composition. I'm carving it out, literally carving with a brush, which I haven't gotten to yet. I'll get to that point. So I started looking at her work. I was looking at calligraphy. Just looking at just mark makers, how to make a mark, and around the same time, of course, still creating my prayer bead series. Same time, I started working at a charter school, middle school, teaching art, and of course, when you're teaching, you don't have time to just paint. So I started just writing with calligraphy pens and calligraphy tools, and simultaneously as I was working my prayer bead series, I was working with creating letters, or just working with letters. And same thing, having an idea, creating symbols, creating an image off of that idea. And when I was in school, well, I mean, I was raised with learning disability at a really young age. I was aware of my learning disability at a very young age. I was like 5 or 6 years old. My mom's like, "You have a learning disability. We got to work on this." Not that my mom forced me to learn a way. She wasn't like saying be normal, but she was very much adamant in saying I need to be aware of how I learn and how I learn things and learn how to learn, and kind of acknowledge that, and how I write and how I speak. So I'm hyper aware. On top of my learning disability and my ADD, I'm also hyper aware of like how I talk and how I present myself, almost overly, almost too much. But anyway, but having a disability in like reading comprehension and verbal comprehension and numbers, and having a bit of astigmatism, having a bit of dyslexia, so having a bit of everything. A jack of all trades when it comes to learning disability. And the funny thing is, a father of a friend when I was a kid. I don't know why I told him, but he was driving me somewhere, and I mentioned it for whatever reason. And he's like, really? You have a learning disability? I'm like, yeah. He's like, you don't look like you have one. And I was like 15 at the time, so that was like 15 years ago. I was like, oh, I don't know how I'm supposed to look like. So the funny thing about this misconception, how people with disabilities, like, how does that person look like? You know, which kind of coincides with like my idea now with this metaphrase series. But going back to working at a charter school, but while I was there, and I took to noticing other kids with learning disabilities, like I kind of identify with them. I can tell when they were frustrated, I can tell when they were mad, which kind of upset me because I can tell they were struggling when other kids were kind of acting a fool, which made me more angry. But so kind of being a bit nostalgic in work environment, like remembering, even though I don't use it as a crutch, just kind of acknowledge it, like, hey, you know, I learned different, I comprehend things a bit different. And then going back to not looking like I have a learning disability, like I don't have Down syndrome or anything like that. I'm not yelling, and I'm socially fine. And then also having conversations of being born in Puerto Rico, being raised in New Jersey, living in Patterson, living in Garfield, living on Pompton Lakes, and those are three very different locations. And even within each town or city I lived in, because I'm my learning disability, I was constantly jumping from school to school. Like a bit here, a little bit there. So I was never like in one place ever. I was always jumping around because of some schools will have my classes I needed, other schools didn't, and sometimes they just discontinue certain they'll discontinue that particular program. And I got to move me somewhere else. So I never really felt like I belonged anywhere in particular, but it's fine, which is common for most people that are moving around a lot. And also as I grew older, I spoke Spanish less and less. I became a bit more detached from my Puerto Rican roots. So even when I go to Puerto Rico now, which happens once every few years or so, like they as in Puerto Ricans that live in Puerto Rico view me as, oh, you're American. And then even though I'm very much brown, they're like, oh, you know, you're a gringo, you're white, you're not white as in color, but white as in culture. Then, you know, come here, then people view me as Puerto Rican. So it's kind of like and it's not like a pity party, but like kind of like wherever you go, you're always from the other place. I think the only place that someone viewed me as a Puerto Rican, regardless of where I lived, was probably London. I went there, they're like, oh, you're Puerto Rican. I'm like, yeah. They're like, awesome. Even though my passport says Puerto Rico, but it was an odd thing. I had to actually go to Europe where there was no like, you're this or you're that. No one said you're not Puerto Rican enough. You're just Puerto Rican. And I have discussions with people today where they'll tell me that I'm not Puerto Rican, where I'm not Puerto Rican like they are. I'm not Hispanic like they are. 2 weeks ago or a week ago, I had a discussion with a friend, and he told me, you're not Hispanic. Not just you're not Puerto Rican, you're not Hispanic. You're American. And funny thing is that, you know, half of America is Hispanic. Like, South America is America. The majority of South America is Latino. So it's this funny thing about being a brown Puerto Rican American citizen, identifying as both, but not completely fitting in both. Kind of having one foot in one place, one foot in the other. So it gets kind of muddy, it gets muddled up, and even having conversations with friends, and they'll tell me years later, like, oh yeah, I thought you're not quite one thing or the other, you're kind of a little bit of everything, you're kind of, you know, it's, even growing up, I was never in like I was a jock. I was in wrestling and all that, you know, weightlifting and working out. But I was also like an artist in high school, and people find that weird. You're either one or the other, right? Or, you know, I was painting, but also doing wrestling, and then going to church, you know. So how I, like, not now, but at the time I was like going to church all the time and also an artist. So I'm liberal and I'm also religious and all that. So all these things kind of percolated in my head while working, teaching kids, and I just kind of started creating as my own little alphabet. Like, let me take some Gothic black letter, Hebrew and Arabic. Why Hebrew and Arabic? I just find them very beautiful. That's as far as that goes. I find those two languages very beautiful, audibly and visually. But also the realizing, also going back to religion, also realizing growing up, I mean, being raised in a non-denominational household and religion, I don't know if you're familiar with this, but there's rarely a non-denominational Christian building. There are always just a group of people that you know, are Christian, that read the Bible, then they go to church, and their church is them, and they just have to simply rent out space, an auditorium or a gym or what have you, or a school, and that they have church there. So there's no, I never saw a church as a building or as an architecture. I always saw it as a group of people. But, you know, traveling to France and a bunch of different places and seeing different cathedrals and mosques, realizing, oh, well, religion has there's a visual aspect to religion. And I found it very beautiful. At first, I was very cynical towards it. I thought it was like idolizing and creating like idols and whatnot. But then I quickly realized, oh, it's really beautiful, and I should embrace this. And this is interesting how there's like this visually rich history, you know, which is pretty awesome. So I'm kind of borrowing from a lot of different religions, like, you know, either color or, you know, letters, or just constantly borrowing from that. And I just find it, instead of being cynical or critical, just like, let me embrace it. I no longer identify as being religious, but hey, there's a lot to glean from it, especially, you know, when it comes to my work. So the work that I'm creating now, this is a long, drawn-out answer to one simple question, comes from all those ingredients, from religion, from identity, how I identify myself or how people identify me, my upbringing with learning disability and reading issues and language issues, and kind of combining it together. Some things I'm interpreting are way more autobiographical, like from me. Others are more just like very distant that I admire, like Arabic or Hebrew. And then when I kind of put it together, create this sort of alphabet, I kind of want people to come at it different angles. Some people view it just aesthetically, like, wow, this is beautiful, and that's it. You know, sometimes you walk into the cathedral and you just realize, hey, this is just beautiful. A lot of gold, a lot of silver. There's imagery, but some people that walk into a cathedral might not know that, hey, that scene means something in the Bible or whatever. So in the same way, when people walk in or view a piece, they can like it as just aesthetically, just the composition. I mean, for those who are more aware of the series, that know the letters, they can actually read it and understand it just in that way. And some people like it because it creates a dialogue between me and the viewer. Like, we talk about what it says and what it means. And what I'm writing is pretty much, for right now, what I'm writing is I'm creating, not creating metaphrases, but a metaphrase is when you translate one word or sentence from one language literally to another language, which is called a metaphrase, which is very confusing when you translate one from one language to another, because there's no context. It's just, it doesn't really make any sense. Beautiful, but doesn't make any sense. And I'm taking idioms from specifically Hispanic idioms, more specifically Puerto Rican idioms, translating them literally from Spanish to English, and writing them in this sort of like made up alphabet inspired by Hebrew, black letter, and Arabic, and then combining it together and, you know, making something out of it. I don't know how long I'm gonna make this series for, but I've been working on it for about a year and a half. Yeah, I started last August, and it's July. So I started August 2015. It's July of 2016, and now I'm having a solo show on a series that I kind of created working in at a charter school, teaching art. At first, I didn't think it was going to be anything. I just thought, hey, I'm just writing. And then kind of created it. But I still kind of stick with the idea that I just see these as symbols, just like Monk Puppy, just like Boomer, just like The Curious Elephant, Baby Series. It's the same idea. Like, I have these ideas, and I'm making a symbol or a character off of it. But yeah, I'm having fun so far.